Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate the Smile 2 poster effect in Photoshop. If you want to follow along, I have included all the assets that I use in a link in the description of this video. Go ahead, download those, and then let's dive into Photoshop. All right, this is the poster we're going to be recreating. Now, obviously, I don't have the same photo, but I did find a relatively similar photo on Unsplash that we'll be using as our base image. And the effects that I want to recreate here is this torn paper effect going to this kind of grungy red background. And I also want to show you how to create grunge on top of your lettering like you can see here. And we'll also look at how to add some fold marks onto your background. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and close this, and I'm going to go to File, Open, and in the Assets folder, there's this base image. This is an image I found on Unsplash, and the first thing I want to do is set up some guides. So go to View, Guides, New Guide Layout, and let's put this on default, and we're going to set the columns to 2. And get rid of the gutter. We're going to set the rows to 6 and get rid of the gutter. And then I'm going to set my margins here, 192 for the top, 0 for the left, 344 for the bottom, and 0 for the right. Let's hit OK. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to add the blue eyeliner because I feel like that's kind of an important element of this piece of art, and it gives us one more counter color or harmonizing color inside this. So I'm going to go ahead and do Command semicolon to turn off those guides. And I'm going to do this with a curve layer. So what I'll do first is just make a rough selection of where I want this makeup to be. I'm going to do the same on this side, just holding down Shift as I make my selection. All right, and then I'm going to go here and add a curve. I'm going to go to my red, the opposite of red being cyan, pull that down, and then I'm going to go to my blue, pull that up, and then maybe to my RGB and counter all that blue that I'm adding, like so, and then also maybe a little bit of green. So that's good in terms of the curve there. However, obviously this does not look very well put on. So what we're going to do first is just go to our mask properties and add some feather to get rid of the harsh line. And then I'm going to go to my brush tool, and with a black soft brush, I'm just going to paint this out there and there. So it kind of fades in, and then we'll also get rid of it here. And maybe I'll paint out even more here so it's a little bit closer to the original, where most of it's just happening down here. And I think I can also go in here and adjust even more cyan in there to make that really stand out, and maybe a little more blue. All right, I'm happy with that. The one other thing I want to do to her before I add my effects here is I'm going to add a layer here, and we're just going to call this Eye Highlights. I'm going to put this on Overlay. I'm going to switch my brush to white, take down the flow to 10, and then just hit the eyes a couple times to kind of make those a little bit brighter there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this bottom layer here and do Command J so that we have that on its own layer. And then I'll take all these three and do Command G to put them in a group. We're going to call this Artwork. And then underneath the artwork, I'm going to add a solid color layer. And we're going to make this pure red. Actually, we'll make it just a little bit darker than pure red. So something like F70,000. And I hit OK there. And now what we're going to do is add the rip, the tear that makes the smile, and also the tear kind of going through her face. Now, if you want to, you can pull up your reference and put it next to what you're working on. I have this on my second monitor, so I'm going to leave it there so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go onto my lasso tool, and I'm going to add a mask onto this group, like so. And then I'm going to do Command semicolon to turn on the guides. I basically want this to go from about here to there, and then like so. Now, because I have my snap turned on, you can see that the guides are influencing my lasso. I don't want that, so I'm going to go here, View, and turn off Snap. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw this again. Now you'll see it's not snapping to that. And kind of want to, I'm doing this with my mouse, and I kind of want it to be jittery so it has that torn paper effect. So I'm intentionally doing this kind of slow so that my hand jiggles a bit as I do it. I'm going to go up to here and then start coming back down. Kind of cut through her face right here. And then go back up to about there. All right, and then with my mask selected and a black as my foreground color, I'm going to do Option Delete. And right away you can see how that effect is taking place. I'm going to go in here and just this part right here is a little bit too low. I'm going to fill that with white with Command Delete. And then I want to do the tear that kind of starts right about here and comes down through here above her eyebrow and then cuts through this eye, cuts across here through her nose, down here, down to her chin here, and then kind of through her neck like this. And then I'm going to go back up, kind of follow along, but intentionally go toward and away from my original so that we have that torn paper effect. And then I want it to get closer to my original line as I get toward the end there. So just like that, and I'll fill this with black as well. All right, so now I have my basic tear in place. I'm going to turn off the guides with Command semicolon again. And what I want to do now is roughen these up so that they look more like paper. And the way I'm going to do that is first I'll just unlink my mask, select my mask, and then go up to Filter, Pixelate, Crystallize. And you can see what that effect is doing to the edge there. For my first one, I'm going to set this pretty high, and this is just going to create some really big cuts to this. So let's hit OK. Now you can see that that kind of destroyed my original tear. So what I'm going to do is go to Edit, Fade Crystallize, and here what we can do is set this to either screen, in which case it'll be constrained to only happen inside of my original mask, or I can set this to multiply, in which case my original tear will always remain fully intact. And that's what I want to do here because I don't want this to get bigger. So I'm going to put this on multiply and then hit OK. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do now is smooth these lines out a bit. And we can actually do that by double clicking on our mask. And if it brings up the properties, you can go to Select and Mask, although you may already have it set so that when you double click the mask, it goes straight into Select and Mask. And here, I'm going to turn the opacity of this to 100. I can also change this to red so I get a better visual example of what's going to happen here. And here I want to go to smoothing and start increasing the value of this. And then I also want to increase the contrast to get rid of any parts that aren't either black or white. So something like this. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go back to my crystallize. And this time I'm going to set it to a much lower setting. So probably around 15. I'm going to hit OK. And then again, I'm going to go to Edit, Fade Crystallize, and set this to Multiply. Okay, and then I want to do the Select and Mask one more time. I can access that up here. I'm going to smooth this again, and then increase the contrast, hit OK. And then one last time I'm going to do Crystallize, but this time I'm going to set it to 4. And this will just give me that fine paper edge. All right, so now I have a nice looking tear that looks like it's was paper. And the next thing I'm going to do now is start adding some drop shadows here. Now I'm going to take this mask that I created and I'm going to drag it down to this background copy. And then on this background copy, I'm going to add a drop shadow. And let's reset this to default. I'm going to turn this up and then make this a little bit wider. And this first one is just going to give me this kind of slightly internalized drop shadow effect. I'm going to hit OK there. And then the next one, I want to have a stronger drop shadow. So this one I'm going to do manually. I'm going to hold down Command, click on this to select my transparency, and above my red layer I'm going to add a new layer and we're going to call this drop shadow. I'm going to fill this with black, so black is my foreground color. I can do Option Delete. I'm going to do Command Delete or Command D to deselect. You can also do that here. And then I'm going to do Command T for transform. And here what I want to do is hold down Shift and drag this down a bit, and also hold down Shift and drag this to the left a bit. And then I'm going to put this on warp, turn that on, and just in the middle here I want to drag it down a little bit lower. And then on the edges I'm going to drag it up like so. All right, and then I'm going to put this on multiply, and then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And we'll put this on like maybe 4 pixels. And then I'm going to take down the opacity. So that looks good. And then finally, I do need one just slightly stronger shadow just along the bottom here. So to do that, I'm going to do Command click on this again, but I'm going to hold down Option or Alt, and I'm on my lasso tool. I'm just going to deselect the bottom here. That way I just have this top element selected. I'm going to add one more layer and we'll call this hard shadow. I'm going to fill this in with black again with Option Delete, deselect with Command D or that button, and then do Command T for transform. I'm going to go straight into warp and just pull down this in the middle here. And then we're going to put this on filter, blur. We'll make this Gaussian blurred. This one's going to be a bit stronger, so around 30 pixels. And then I'll take down the opacity here to about 75. Okay, so now above my color fill, I'm going to add some grunge. So let's go to File, Place Embedded. And inside my assets folder, I've got this grunge background. I'm going to take that and turn it and make it the size of my canvas here. And then we're going to put this on multiply. And then I'm going to do Command M to bring up my curve. And I want to take the white and make it line up to about the middle here. That way I just have my black scratches and grunge happening on this background. So let's hit OK there. That's looking good. The other thing I need to do before I add titles to this is I want to add the folds, the white folds on here. So I'm going to do that on top of this layer here. So I'm going to do File, Place Embedded. And you're going to see this Texture Labs. And you can see this has those folds that I want. So I'm going to turn this around like this and maybe right mouse click, flip horizontal. And then we'll drag this to down here. And for this, I'm going to put it on screen. And then you can see right now we have this line. I'm going to do Command M to bring up my curve and just move my black point to the right until that line disappears. Just like that. Okay, so I now have all that in place. I'm pretty much ready to do my lettering. The one thing I want to do before that is add a film grain layer on top of everything. So let's go ahead and add a layer above here. I'm going to call this film grain. Make this a neutral gray, so just 50 with no hue or saturation. And then I'll do Option Delete to fill the layer. I go up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. It's my favorite for creating film grain because I have this roughness control. I'll take that down and then hit OK. We're going to put this on linear light. And right now it's way too strong, so we're going to take the fill down until it's evident but not too strong, so around 20. Okay, and then the last thing I want to do before I start the lettering is just add a little bit of a dark gradient here so that our letters show up. So I'm going to do that right above the eye highlights here. And I'm going to go to my gradient tool, make sure I'm on foreground to transparent. I want this on classic gradient. I'm going to make my foreground color black with a D on my keyboard, which defaults my colors. And then I'll just hold Shift and add a slight gradient up there. That looks good. All right, now I'm going to do Command semicolon to turn those guides back on. And I'm going to change my foreground color to just an off-white, so something like this. I'm going to go onto my type tool, and I'm using a font called Serif Gothic. That is the font that's used on the original poster. For my first type here, I'm going to set this to 84. And I'm going to click right here in the middle, and we're going to type in, "It will never let go." And for this, I'm going to open up my character palette and set the tracking here to 420. Okay, and then I'm going to zoom in here and just put this on that guide right there, like so. Okay, and then for the smile down here, we're going to hold down Option and just drag this layer until it's on this guide right there. I'll select this and type in smile, select all. I'm going to make this 280 point with 40 tracking. Okay, now for this one, I want to take this grunge layer and put it on that smile. So what I'm going to do is find this grunge layer here, do Command J to make a copy, and I'm going to drag this all the way so that it sits right above the smile, hold down Option and clip it so it's only applying to that layer. And then I'm going to do Command T for transform and make it smaller so that it's smaller in scale. So something like this. And then I can move this around until I find a spot where I like its placement. I think that looks good. All right, and then finally I'm going to do one more layer, type layer. So I'll just go underneath the smile, go onto my type tool, click and hit 2. And this one is going to be 550 pixels or points. And it's going to sit kind of right here so that the top of the 2 there fits nicely in the top shape of this M. So just like that, move this down just a tiny bit. And this, I want to have this same red grungy texture. Now, the easy way to do that is to make my character red. And then we can take this same grunge layer here, hold down Option, and I'm going to drag this so that it's above the 2, hold down Option and clip that. And then I can obviously move this around until I get a nice placement for it. So just like that. Let's turn off the guides. There you have it. That's how you recreate that poster effect inside of Photoshop. And hopefully through the course of this, you learned some tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use in your own projects. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial and learned something, please subscribe to my channel, turn on your notifications, leave a comment, leave a like, share this video, do all that good stuff. And if you want to check out some other tutorials on how to recreate posters inside of Photoshop, you can check those out here. And if you're interested in taking Photoshop to a professional level, check out Nucly.com. I sell both professional training and professional tools for graphic designers, artists, and photographers who are serious about Photoshop. So check that out. Otherwise, I will see you next time.